Hello, Serious Survivor here. This video is the beginning of a series discussing and demonstrating the skills, training, and abilities that are necessary to begin to prep. Prepping means to prepare. It's about preparing mentally and physically. Gear is great and it makes survival much easier, but we must have the correct training and skill sets to survive in any situation. This is necessary because disaster or worse can strike at any given moment, and rarely, if ever, does it give us a warning beforehand. You may find yourself in a situation in which you have no gear, and when that happens, you must have a complete set of skills in order to survive. Remember, knowledge is not just power. It is also necessary and is something that once you gain, you will always have with you. You can't carry gear everywhere, but knowledge, well, you don't leave home without it. The intention of this video is to help those who are just now making a decision to begin prepping, and for those who have just started but are unsure about where and how to begin. Before you start buying anything, evaluate your ability to perform the skills we will talk about here. These skills will enable you to survive almost any situation you may encounter. This is when you start to notice what types of gear you may need and don't need. It's best to understand your personal skills and abilities, and then you will find the appropriate gear that works best for you. And once you start prepping, it seems that your mindset will change and you start to notice things in a more tactical manner. This is what is called situational awareness. We're going to talk about survival skills that are necessary for individual survival. And these are gathering food and preparation, shelter, making fire, water purification, first aid, and self-defense. So let's get started. Food gathering and preparation. If you have the ability and are in an environment in which you can hunt or trap wild game and fish, then survival becomes easier and you will greatly increase your potential for long-term survival. Those avenues may be available if you have the proper equipment and are in the proper location. In the case you are not able to hunt, trap, or fish successfully, you'll have to forage for food. Rule number 1 when foraging: study. Know the area you live in and be familiar with the wildlife and edible plants in your immediate area and anywhere that you may plan on bugging out to or are traveling through on the way there. Do this before your life depends on it. Many plants and vegetation have multiple uses, ranging from simple food sources to medicinal purposes. Learn to identify the poisonous plants that you are likely to encounter. Remember, many edible plants have lookalikes that are somewhat poisonous, which brings us to rule number 2 when foraging. Do not eat anything you cannot positively identify and deem safe. Never pick plants in places that are subject to pollution, near industry, or heavy spraying of farm chemicals such as pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, etc. Now, even a type of plant that is not poisonous can be dangerous to you as an individual. So once you have gathered your edibles, make sure your body will not reject this new food. First, rinse or wash the parts of the plant that you're using. Then test one plant at a time, preferably only one new plant per day. Test the plant first by rubbing it on your skin. If there's no reaction, then rub part of the plant on your lips. And if there's no reaction there, then eat a very small portion of the plant. And if you experience no reaction at all, then everything should be well. Shelter. Being able to build shelter is a necessity. For anyone placed in a survival situation, especially during inclement weather, a warm, dry shelter is the first concern. Avoid building in low spots where water might collect during a heavy rain or next to a river or lake. There are many types of primitive shelter that can be constructed with just a minimal amount of tools and only little effort if you have planned accordingly. Some shelter types are debris huts, which is a very simple design. Brush or bush shelters, and these are shelters made from live branches, etc. Thatch and grass shelters. A yurt, which is a traditional type of shelter, although it's not quite as primitive or basic as others. Teepees, the traditional Native American type shelter. A wigwam is another traditional type of shelter, and it's usually made from bark on a stick frame. Snow shelters and scout pits, and these are stealth shelters that are dug into the ground and covered. You also want to consider something to heat your shelter with, and you can do that with rocks. In the description below, I'll leave a link to a very good site that explains and has diagrams and details on how to build every type of shelter, how to heat them, how to seal them properly. So it's excellent reading. Check it out. Fire making. Building a fire is the fulcrum point of survival. Without this ability, your chances for survival are very, very limited. It's necessary to cook, purify water, and heat rocks that you'll put in your shelter for warmth. Building a fire is a relatively simple concept, but it's difficult if you've never done it or practiced it before. There are many tools on the market to make this task much easier, and here are some of the examples. This technique should be practiced with whichever method you decide to use as your primary fire-making method. Find and experiment until you determine which fire-making tools work the best for you. Also, make sure you at least know the concept of starting a fire without any tools. The primitive methods. Water purification. Water purification is the process of removing undesirable chemicals, biological contaminants, suspended solids, and gases from contaminated water. The goal is to produce water fit for human consumption. How to purify water. When the water you're hoping to drink might contain parasites or bacteria particles, you can't afford to take a chance. Whether you're surviving in the wilderness, recovering from a disaster, or any other apocalyptic scenario, the last thing you want to do is get sick. Now, there are multiple products on the market that aid in this. These products range from filtered straws to water bottle filters to chemical purification. But no matter which method or methods you may choose to equip, the basic methods work. The skill may also be dependent upon being able to make fire. So let's look at methods of water purification. Boiling water. Boiling water is a very simple, relatively easy method if you have a container to store the water in that's heat-proof or fireproof, and if you have the ability to make fire. Or boiling water for 1 to 5 minutes will usually purify it sufficiently. It will kill off the vast majority of organisms living in the water. It also removes some chemicals by vaporizing them. Boiling the water will not remove solids, metals, or minerals. Also be aware that the boiling point of water decreases with altitude, so you will not get the same purification effect on a mountaintop as you would on a coastal plain. To have the most effect upon any bacteria and other microorganisms, boil your water for 1 extra minute for every 300 meters above sea level you are. And this is only good up to around 5,500 meters, where boiling becomes ineffective. You can also boil using a pressure cooker to help offset the lower temperature. Once the boiling is complete, let the water sit and settle. Any dense items in the water will sink to the bottom naturally, allowing you to drink the pure water from the top. Creating a purifying system in the wilderness with natural materials. You can start by using a cone that you can form out of a strip of bark. Birch bark or a bark similar to it is best for creating this filtering system because it is flexible and it will keep its shape. Keep in mind that this method will not fully purify water, but it will reduce the amount of microbes in the water. This method should only be used in extreme emergencies. This is your last ditch effort here. If you're having a hard time keeping your bark in the shape of a cone, you could try to use a piece of rope or a durable type of grass around it to keep its shape. Layer the cone with sand, charcoal, grass, gravel, or small rocks. Charcoal is especially good for removing bacteria. If you have a fire, then crush up some of the burnt pieces of wood and put them here. Now pour the water through the cone and into a container. Do this several times to increase the amount of purification that occurs. Now again, this method does not guarantee purification, but it will remove a good deal of the contaminants in the water and can assist when you have no other alternatives. Making a solar still. If you are in an area with a lot of sun, this method may work for you. First, use a bowl or anything that can hold water and that has a flat surface. Second, put a weighted cup in the flat part of the plate. It must be a cup that doesn't float in the water. Third, fill the bowl with the dirty water that you want to purify and make sure you do not get any of the water into the cup. Next, put a clear wrap on top of the bowl and make sure that it is tightly sealed. Put a rock or heavy object on top of the clear wrap over the spot where the cup is. Let it sit in the sun. What will happen is the sun will evaporate the water, but the water cannot escape because you have the plastic over the top. So the water goes to the top of the bowl that's covered in clear wrap. The water then goes toward the weighted part of the rock and starts dripping into the cup. Anything that isn't in the water is left behind in the bowl. But keep in mind that this can take days and sometimes even weeks to happen. So this would be a last-ditch resort, or it would be a method that you use to purify larger amounts of water that you can sit to the side and wait on it to happen. Method 4, using a water purifier. There are several products on the market that will purify water, and here are a few of the different types. First, you can use a pump purifier. You can use these types of purifiers in conjunction with a canteen or water bottle when out in the wilderness. These pumps are generally handheld and made out of synthetic or ceramic cartridge. Most filters have 2 separate hoses, one for clean water, the other for dirty water. On the hose that pumps the dirty creek or lake water, you might find a foam flotation device that helps keep the hose from sinking to the bottom and sucking up the silty bottom water. The pump will have a plunger or lever that can be pulled and pushed so that water is sucked up, run through a series of filters within the plunge, and then pumped out and into your water bottle. Next, a water bottle with a built-in purifier. And you can buy many different brands of water bottles that have built-in purifiers, and these are very reliable devices and they last for an extremely long time. There are many different types on the market, ranging from a water bottle type to the life straw type. You can use an ultraviolet purifier. These purifiers are very easy to use. You simply stick the pin of the lamp into the water, wait for the light on the side of the pin to turn green, and then you stir the pin around in the water until the light turns off. The UV rays kill any bacteria living in the water so that your water becomes safe to drink. Keep in mind that this doesn't filter out the now deceased bacteria, but despite their continued presence in your water, they're not dangerous anymore. Another type is the gravity-fed purifier. These are filters just like the ones used by Brita or Pure. As the name suggests, these filters use gravity to pull the dirty water through a filter and into the reservoir that contains the clean water. These filters are best used at home or at a campsite, as they are generally pretty large and would be a pain to tote around in the wilderness. Water purification tablets. Now keep in mind that this is not the best tasting method, but protection from bacteria and other harmful products is worth a bitter taste in your mouth. Iodine tablets are the most commonly sold purifying tablets, but you can also use chlorine tablets with the same result. These tablets are the most effective when the water you're purifying is 68 degrees. These chemical tablets will kill bacteria living in your water. To use these, the first thing you want to do is strain the water if it has large particles floating around in it, or to be safe, strain it anyway. And you can do this by pouring the water through a cloth. The cloth acts as a strainer that can remove particles floating in the water. Next, place the tablets in the water. If your tablets or drops come with instructions, then follow these instructions definitely. In general though, you want to use 1 tablet for each quart or liter of water you wish to purify. So next, mix the tablets into the water until they dissolve. They must be completely dissolved so they can mix effectively with the water you're purifying. Then wait 30 minutes before drinking the water, as the tablets, they will need time to effectively kill any bacteria that's in the water. They don't work immediately, so you're going to have to let the water stand for a little bit. You should also be aware that tablets are generally less effective in water that is cold. If the water is 40 degrees or less, you should wait at least an hour after the tablets have dissolved before drinking the water. Now you can also place the water in the sun to warm it up before using the tablets. First aid. First aid is essential. This is a skill you must acquire and be efficient with in order for long-term survival. This is also a very broad subject and can take many years to master some of the more difficult techniques. But as an individual, you know yourself and your family better than anyone else. Basic first aid skills can be learned from many different resources, and I hesitate to give any advice on first aid or medical treatments of any type for anyone other than myself and my immediate family. We need to understand, though, that in a dangerous situation, or survival in general, will eventually lead to some type of injury or injuries. You have to have the skills and ability to treat them. At least learn the basics so you can help treat and take care of minor wounds and injuries. And remember, in any situation of any type where there are no medical professionals, no medical facilities, and no 911 to call, even the smallest of wounds can turn into the most serious infections. This is an important part, and I will leave several links to some excellent sites in the description below. The last topic is self-defense. This is a subject that for some reason people seem to disagree on. Self-defense is necessary for the obvious reasons, in addition to the confidence it gives you knowing that you are prepared to not only defend you and yours, but to do it effectively. This area will be different for each and every person who hears this. What works for me may not work for you, and vice versa. The key is to know yourself, your physical limitations, and your willingness to act, and act swiftly. When I was in the military, I was introduced to what is called VOA, which is violence of action. What this means is the more unexpected and violent your initial reaction or actions towards an enemy are, the more likely the enemy is to succumb or flee. Headstrong action, hit first, hit hard, this isn't for everyone. Some may prefer more stealthy tactics, which make the gray man tactics ideal for them. As for me and my 4 sons, we have trained martial arts, kickboxing, and Greco-Roman wrestling for many years, and from this training I have the peace of mind knowing that my sons are capable of defending themselves. Now, whether you want to fight or avoid a conflict, the fact remains, in an apocalyptic scenario, you may very well be forced to defend yourself and your family one day. And if you do not have the ability or means to do so, then things could end very abruptly and very violently. Some people may not have the means or time to train at a martial art or similar. If this is the case, I would recommend purchasing a weapon or weapons and learn how to use them. Self-defense is not a luxury. In any type of apocalyptic scenario, it will be a necessity. I hope this video was informative and you enjoyed it. Tune into the Serious Survivor channel for more installments on this series, and we'll be getting much more in-depth on each individual topic and more. If you like the video, please subscribe and like, and for now, Serious Survivor out.